Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another episode of our series Tajweed, the art of reciting the Quran. In a very beautiful hadith, the Prophet ﷺ gave us the parable of the believer who recites the Quran versus those who do not. The Prophet ﷺ said that the example of the mu'min, of the believer who recites the Quran, is like that of a citrus fruit. A citrus fruit is a large white fruit. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ said that his example of the believer who recites the Quran is like that of a citrus fruit. Its fragrance is sweet, and it is also sweet to eat. So the believer, when he is around other people, the people enjoy being with him. And they like his company. And they benefit from him because his fragrance is sweet, spiritually. And when they get to know him better, they also find he is a good person at heart. Because he is sweet from the inside as well. The Prophet went on, he said, the example of the believer who does not recite the Quran is like that of a date, a dried up date. It has no fragrance, but it is still sweet to eat. So the believer who does not recite the Quran, he is not evil, but his good is of a lesser level than the one who does. So a person, maybe he will not get to know him that well initially because he has no fragrance to him. But when he does get to know him, he will find that he is a good person at heart. And the example, the Prophet said, of the hypocrite who recites the Quran is like that of a rayhana, or a type of basil. A rayhana, the Prophet said, its fragrance is very sweet, but it is bitter to eat. So the hypocrite, when he mixes with society, people might think he's a good person because he's reading the Quran. But when you get to know him, you will find that he is evil at heart. And then the final parable the Prophet ﷺ gave is that of the hypocrite who does not recite the Quran. He said he is like a handala. A handala is a small seed, which the Prophet described it. It has no smell to it, and it is also bitter to taste. So this is the example of the hypocrite who does not recite the Quran. He has no benefit to society, and even in and of himself, he is an evil person. The purpose of this example is so that we strive to be like the citrus fruit. The believer who recites the Quran, he benefits others and he benefits himself. People like to be with him and they like to get to know him. And of the ways we can become like this person is to recite the Quran properly. And this is the purpose of the show, how to recite the Quran properly. In our previous episode, we had discussed various letters that emanate from the tongue, and we had discussed 7 areas of the tongue where letters come from. Today we will finish up the remaining 5 of them and talk about other letters that come from the tongue. We start off with the 7th makhraj. We had discussed 6 before. In this episode, we'll start with the 7th specific area of the tongue where the letters come from, and this is the area of the tip of the tongue along with the gums of the upper incisor teeth. The gums meaning the area behind the teeth. So you use the tip of the tongue and you place it close to the gums of the upper teeth, and from this one letter comes, and that is the letter Ra. Ra. Notice here on the computer, we have the letter Ra being shown. If you see it there, here, we find the Ra coming right behind the incisors there, touching up the gum. Notice that the Arabic Ra uses the tip of the tongue for this letter. Therefore, because of this, the Arabic Ra is completely different from the English R. And this is a very, very common mistake. When those who speak Arabic start speaking English, they use the Arabic letter Ra to substitute the English R. And when those who speak English try to recite the Quran, they use the English R in place of the Arabic Ra. But they are 2 separate letters. The English R comes from the middle of the tongue, whereas the Arabic Ra comes from the tip of the tongue, along with the incisors or the gum behind the incisors. Let me mispronounce some words for you so you know what I'm talking about. For example, the English word rail, as in a railroad. If we were to pronounce it with the Arabic, it will become rail, which is why people from other countries, when they start learning English, people make fun of them, because they don't know how to pronounce the R properly. But don't forget, the opposite also applies. That when a Westerner or a person who speaks English tries to recite the Quran, he substitutes the English R for the Arabic Ra, and this is a mistake. Okay, likewise the English word real. Notice if I said real with the Arabic Ra, it will become real. Real. It's not going to be real. It will be real. And you see the difference between the two. So it is very important that you differentiate between the English R versus the Arabic Ra. Okay? In English we say Arabic, whereas we say Arabi, Ra, Ra, Ara, Ara. Okay, notice the difference. The ra and the ra. Two completely separate letters. Remember the difference. The English R comes from the middle of the tongue, and the Arabic ra comes from the tip of the tongue. It is very important that when we pronounce the R in Arabic, the ra in Arabic, we do not roll the tongue. We do not repeat the sound of the ra. Okay? For example, in the phrase Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, many people fall into the error of making their tongue roll. And they'll say, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. I'm exaggerating so you understand what the mistake is. Okay? This is a mistake. You cannot allow the tongue to roll. Ar-Rahman is a mistake. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. No rolling. So it is very important when we pronounce the R, the ra in Arabic, we don't say ra, because it is a mistake. Rather, we say ra. One precise ra. And we don't roll it to produce multiple ras like this. Okay? The eighth makhraj of the tongue, we'll move on to another makhraj, another area of the tongue, is that of the tip of the tongue and the upper portion of it, along with the gum behind the incisors. So in this case, we have the tip. Remember, the tip is this area. Along with the upper portion, together with it. And then you place that behind the canine or the incisor teeth, and that is the makhraj of three letters. The dal, the ta, and the ta. The ta, dal, and ta. These three letters, they are produced not just by the tip, but by the tip along with the upper portion. It has to stick with the gum. Let us look at the ta here on the computer screen. Notice here the ta, okay, it's coming right completely up to the gums and placing itself on the gums. Likewise, the letter ta is in the same makhraj, and we're going to discuss the difference between the ta and the ta in a future episode. It's in the same area where the tip of the tongue goes and touches, along with the front part of it, touches the area behind the gums. Okay, so this is the eighth makhraj, the ta, the dal, and the ta. Once again, the dal is different from the English D. This is very similar, but it's still different. Okay, the dal is not an English D. Notice the word Adam. If we speak in a Western way, we say Adam. Adam, the Prophet Adam. When we speak in Arabic, we say Adam. Adam, Adam. There's a slight difference. The difference is that the English D only uses the tip. Okay? So when you try to pronounce the English D, you only use the tip. When you say the Arabic dal, you use the tip along with the upper portion. Okay? Da versus da. The ninth makhraj, the ninth area of the tongue, is the tip of the tongue as it connects with the gum behind the upper incisors and a slight gap. So this is the tip along with the gum behind the teeth, but there's a slight gap between the gum and the teeth. And three letters come from this area, that of the Sin and the Sad and the Zai. Okay? Sin, Sad, and Zai. Say after me, Sa. Notice where it's coming from. Everybody knows how to say Sa because it's a common sound in all the languages. Sa. The same area where the Sa comes from, the Za also comes from. Za. And the same area as the Sad. Sin, Sad, and Zai. These three letters occur when the tip of the tongue connects with the gum behind the upper incisors and there is a slight gap between them. Let us look at the computer screen here for the Sin. Notice the Sin is right behind the incisors. So it is very close to the dal, ta, and ta, but it's a little bit gap there. Okay? Sa. There's a little bit gap between the tip and the actual gums. And we said three letters come from this area, the Sin, the Sad, and the Zai. This leads us to the final area of the tongue, and that is the upper surface of the tongue along with the tip of the two incisors. In this case, the tongue will actually go outside of the incisors, unlike in all of the other letters. Okay? And there are three letters that come from here, the Tha, the Dhal, and the Dha. Okay? Notice the tongue will be outside of the incisors by a millimeter if you like. Tha. Say Tha. Tha. Notice the tha, where is your tongue now? It's not inside as it was with the sin and all the other letters. It's actually outside a little bit. It's protruding by a very small amount. Tha. Okay? Let us look at the computer visualization of that. Here. Notice, very clearly you see the tongue moving outside of the incisors in the tha. Okay? The same applies to the dhal. For the dhal as well, we find that the tongue actually goes outside. So the difference then between the za and the dhal, again, many people mess this up. The difference between that is that the zai occurs where? Inside the mouth, by touching the gums. Whereas the dhal, the tongue will be outside of the mouth. Okay? And the same applies with the dha and the tha. Okay? So these are the 10 makharij, or the 10 areas of the tongue where letters come from. As a practice recitation, let me recite to you Surah Al-Zilzal. You will find a lot of these letters there. And listen to me and see where these letters come from. Surah Al-Zilzal is the 99th surah in the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Notice the 2 R's with the shadda on them in the Rahman. I didn't roll them. Remember we talked about we're not allowed to roll them. Had I rolled them, it would have sounded like Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Or even if you do it a little bit, it is a mistake. Now this is a very difficult thing to correct. Many people say that when they recite, they say Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. They just have a little bit of rolling. This is a mistake. And it needs to be cut out completely. And this requires lots of practice. Even I sometimes, if I'm tired, sometimes I'll also roll it accidentally. Because it really requires a practice of the tongue. Okay? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا. Notice the dhal and the zai. إِذَا زُل. إِذَا زُل. The dhal, my tongue is outside. إِذَا. And then when I get to zul, the tongue goes inside. And again, this is a very common error. You have many people say إِذَا زُل or إِذَا ذُل. They forget the difference between the dhal and the zai. إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ. The dad we did in last episode, and remember the dad comes from one entire edge of the tongue. And that is inside the mouth as well. إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا. Notice the ras again. أَخْبَارَهَا, not أَخْبَارَهَا, which is the way that many Westerners would do it. The R and the Ra. أَخْبَارَهَا versus أَخْبَارَهَا, which is the wrong way. يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا. Notice the ha and the ha. We covered this in a previous episode as well. What is the difference? Who can remind me? The ha comes from where?
The lowest. No, from the middle.
No, not the lowest. The middle. The ha comes from the middle. What comes from the lowest? The ha. Exactly. Okay. So listen to it again. بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا. أَوْحَى لَهَا. The ha comes from lower and the ha comes from higher. يَوْمَئِذٍ يَصْدُرُ النَّاسُ أَشْتَاتًا لِيُرَوْا أَعْمَالَهُمْ فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. Notice all of the ra's here. ذَرَّة, خَيْرًا, ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا. No rolling. As I'm trying to do now to show you the mistake. ذَرَّة, no. Okay? ذَرَّةٍ, ذَرَّةٍ. You make sure there is no rolling of the R. This is a very common mistake. And as I said, it is something which requires practice, and it requires someone to listen to you to make sure that you don't fall into that mistake. With this, we come to the conclusion of today's episode. Until next time, we hope to see you then. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa